On March 11, 2011, a tsunami slammed into the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant in Japan, causing the deadliest nuclear disaster since Chernobyl. The increase that followed stressed the unexpectedness of the situation, a perfect confluence of earthquake, tsunami, and reactor meltdown that no one could have prepared for. However true this may be from a nuclear engineering or contingency planning perspective, it is not true from the lens of environmental justice. From local issues like the location of the plant and its lax safety procedures, to policy issues like the Japanese government's push for a peaceful nuclear future, these human failings caused the plant to be built where it was built and maintained how it was maintained. This video is not about Fukushima. It is about how these same human failures caused another environmental disaster in the past, and whether they will return to haunt Japan once more. 100 years ago, in Kyushu, the other end of the country, another environmental disaster was happening. The Shin Nihon Shiso Chemical Company had put down roots in Minamata in 1908 and was beloved by the town's residents for the jobs and prosperity it brought to them. Japanese imperialism in Korea and Manchuria meant that Shiso's fertilizers were in high demand. As the factory expanded, Minamata did too, its population ballooning from 20,000 in 1920 to 50,000 in 1956. But there was a hidden side to the prosperity Shiso brought. As early as 1920, fishermen had complained to Shiso that its drainage policy was affecting their yields. Locals reported in 1951 that the water in the town harbor was becoming visibly dirty. Their cat's behavior became erratic, often dancing or gyrating madly before dying. In 1956, children began having difficulties in walking and talking. Within a month, some were dead. Something was terribly wrong. Although the strange disease was brought to attention in 1956, government investigators only managed to identify organic mercury as the cause in 1959. Shiso had suspected that their chemicals were the cause a year before that, after an experimental diversion of wastewater to the Minamata River created the same environmental problems, and mercury in their waste was confirmed as the cause in 1959 by Hosokawa Hajime, the factory's hospital director, who had been running experiments where he fed wastewater to cats. Yet the company continued to deflect blame and promote alternative theories. And in 1959, they were saved by future Prime Minister Ikeda Hayato, who denied that mercury was the cause and disbanded the Minamata Food Poisoning Subcommittee. Thus, the first round of investigations was over. Chiso agreed to pay sympathy money to disease victims and fishermen and install a purification system which did not work on mercury. The disease continued to spread. Unlike the popular conception of an environmental justice struggle, where there are only two groups, victims and perpetrators, Minamata disease had three. There was Chiso, the corporate polluter who owned the factory. There were the fishermen who sought damages for the loss of their fish stocks and whose protested the factory forced a settlement. And then there were the patients suffering from the disease. The fishermen were somewhat placated by the settlement. The patients were largely ignored. For the next 10 years, people, especially newborn children, continued to die of unknown causes, while those who spoke out were harassed and ostracized by other townspeople who loved and protected Chiso because of the prosperity the factory brought. This would all change with the entrance of Ishimure Michiko. Ishimure Michiko, a former school teacher and a member of a local left-wing literary circle, became the leading voice of the patients' movement during these 10 years of interbellum through her stories in local journals, which she would later adapt into a nationally famous bestseller, Paradise in the Sea of Sorrow. She was also instrumental in working with concerned outsiders, artists, doctors, photographers who wanted to come to Minamata to help, as well as in founding the Citizens Council for Minamata Disease Countermeasures, the main organization that would fight for the second settlement. This new organization was able to galvanize the citizens of Minamata at the same time as when Chiso was finally realizing its growing irrelevance to Japan's new technological transformation. People just didn't need their chemicals anymore. The factory began to downsize. Its economic stranglehold on Minamata was over. At the same time, news of other industrial pollution had begun to spread. Minamata was not the only rural town ruined by Japan's industrialization. There was Yokkaichi, where a petrochemical factory was polluting the air so much townspeople could not breathe. There was Toyama, where cadmium from a mine was causing the bones of people downstream to become soft and brittle. And finally, there was Niigata, where cats were going mad and children were dying in an eerily familiar manner. There was again a chemical plant close by. It was another outbreak of Minamata disease. Hosokawa Hazime and a gaggle of concerned doctors and intellectuals that had stayed in Minamata for all these years immediately rushed to help. As a reward, they brought back to Minamata a delegation of Niigata patients and their support group. On January 24, 1968, the Minamata patients, Minamata Citizens Council, and the Niigata delegation swore to join hands to make the Japanese government recognize mercury as the cause of the disease and take responsibility for the aid efforts in a statement to the press. Thanks to the writings of Ishimure Michiko and the solidarity efforts between Minamata and Niigata, Minamata disease finally made it to the front page of newspapers across the nation. In contrast, the Fukushima nuclear disaster captured the attention of all Japan and half the world besides, from the moment the cooling pumps failed. The Fukushima Daiichi plant was built facing the Northern Pacific Ocean at Japan's rural northeast, but the energy it produced didn't stay in Fukushima. It was transported to Tokyo for the people of Tokyo to use. In this way, Fukushima's land was condemned and its people sacrificed for the benefit of the people and prosperity of Tokyo. Jiso, Pepco, and many companies like them chose to build their factories and nuclear power plants in out-of-the-way areas like Minamata and Fukushima because those decision makers who know the harm their industries caused knew better than to put it where they lived and worked. Instead, they enticed rural villagers to accept these ecological time bombs with promises of safety, transparency, and economic prosperity. When these promises were inevitably broken, no amount of compensation could suffice for the harm done. From 1968, it would take another 5 years for a settlement that held Chiso responsible for the pollution and the compensation, and another 22 years for a comprehensive reparation plan. Many of the patients were not recognized as patients, and many more refused to recognize themselves, despite the obvious symptoms they had. The people of Fukushima, too, will have to live with the memories of March 11 for the rest of their lives. It is therefore no surprise that activists from both places work together to heal and fight for justice. In the style of Wangali Mattai, the Forest People Project is one such group which plants trees in Fukushima and Minamata for both the environment and the participants' own therapeutic healing. Trees in Fukushima help prevent another tsunami since the roots hold the soil together, while trees in Minamata echo Ishimure Michiko's dream of a forest of life growing from soil once polluted by mercury.